What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Comeback Athlete Podcast. I'm joined with my friend, with my former coach for 4 years and business coach, Misbah Haque. Misbah, thanks for coming on the podcast today. Glad to have you, man.
Dude, thanks for having me. I've been watching this since day one, and it's really cool to see the kind of work that you're doing. I definitely resonate with the title. It's one of those things where, it takes you back, and especially in the past year or so, a lot of your messaging has really resonated. So thanks for all the work that you're doing.
Thanks, man. That's encouraging. So for our listeners, we we want to just kind of like give them a quick update on who you are and why we're having you on the podcast. We're going to talk a lot today about kind of the burned out athlete. And you worked a while back at functional bodybuilding and worked with a lot of kind of burned out CrossFitters, burned out athletes. And that kind of became your bread and butter. You were real successful. Now you're no longer in the coaching world, which is actually, you and I were talking off recording a little bit, how that gives you a unique perspective to the fitness space, and also just some really good stuff with regard towards how to think about the athlete and how you would train and reflecting back. But now you're doing Pod Mahal. Give us a little bit of information on what that is and where people can kind of reach you and find you on that.
Yeah, so a quick background. In 2016, that was the first podcast I ever started. Maybe some people remember it back then, but it was called the Airborne Mind Show. And I was a young kid with not really much credibility. I had been probably, in the fitness industry for 4 or 5 years since I was like 17 at that time. And so I was just hungry. I was trying to learn from coaches, athletes, anybody I could talk to. And then within a year, that show is the thing that landed me the gig with Marcus at Functional Bodybuilding, getting to kind of, coach there. And then, so that was the second podcast. And then I kind of became known as like, to his friends and to other people, just like the podcast guy. And I was constantly just helping them out in my free time, with like what equipment to get. And I found myself, just like with coaching, answering a lot of the same questions over and over. And so in 2020 is when I went all in on Pod Mahal. It was kind of really a calling to help people just build their own table with podcasting.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what I did and why I started my very first show. It got me opportunities, access to people and networks that truly just isn't possible. And I mean, look at me. I'm not like, I'm not like 200 pounds of muscle or something like that, right? It's like I had all these things where I shouldn't have really been the guy, but those things help do that. And I think part of it is just, it wasn't faking it. It was just allowing stuff that I was genuinely interested in within the fitness industry to be showcased. And people happen to see that. But yeah, now I'm getting to, so I spent 10 years in the coaching world. And although I'm not fitness coaching nowadays, I have transitioned that skill set into consulting. So I do a lot of consulting with authors, executives, athletes, a lot of coaches as well who are setting up their own podcast, trying to build their own table. So I'm still very connected to the fitness world in that way, where I work with a lot of wellness advocates and people who are, doing a lot of good work. And it's cool to see that like they're helping avatars and folks that I wasn't, right. And it's like I would never have gotten to help those people, maybe just because of, the crowd I was serving. And so it just shows you it's a really big world, and there's a lot of people to help. And so getting to see the different types of messaging that resonate with different groups has been fascinating over the past couple of years. So yeah, that's been my work with Pod Mahal. Check it out on Amazon if you want the book. It's like 99 cents for the Kindle version. It
Yes.
helps out a ton.
Yes, I'm definitely checking that out. I saw you post that the other day, and I'm like, I'm getting this. So that's awesome. So it's funny. Gosh, 2020 feels like such a long time ago, but I remember it felt like it does and it doesn't, because I feel like that was right when I was reaching out to kind of like start working with you. And for those who are listening, like I just took a gamble on Miz. I had one remote client pay me for the year up front, and I took all that. My wife was like, cool, let's put that in the bank. And I'm like, I'm actually going to gamble and hire this guy Misbah to help me take my remote business further because it just really needed help. And I
And I
heard
didn't know
you.
that, by the way. I didn't know that at the
You
time that
did,
that's what
yeah,
was
yeah,
happening.
yeah. So like I remember like I'm like I got 6 months with Miz with this, and if it doesn't work, we're gonna have to stop. And dude, sure enough, like after like month 4 or 5, we started. I think I got like 10 or 11 clients, and I was just off to the races. And then I think by the end of our first year together, like I think you got me up to about 30 clients. So really helped me out your consultation. And I remember like you talking me into doing a podcast and feeling like this feels so silly. Like, who am I? Why would anybody listen to me? I'm not Joe Rogan or Marcus Philly or whoever. And like well, I'm still doing it. Obviously, I'm interviewing you now on a podcast. Like, but you convinced me of the power of like the reach with podcasting and also the ability to get to network and learn in podcasting. And like one of the cool things I think I learned from you is you basically helped start Functional Bodybuilding's podcast with Marcus, and you got to interview him for 4 years, like, weekly. Like basically
Yeah,
you were doing a podcast, but you were getting like mentoring, like questions and learning from, an elite coach, week in, week out. And that was like brilliant idea. It was like you got like free mentoring and got to grow a podcast. So kudos.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that
It
that
was,
was one of the greatest times of my life because it really just opened up possibility, right? You got to see my first show. It got some reach and I got access to people, but nothing like Look Good Move Well, of course, because Marcus has done such a great job building up his audience and his brand. And so yeah, when he asked me to do that, I jumped right on it. And I no matter what it took, I was like, this is going to be worth it. I don't know where it's going, where it will go in the future. But I was like, just to get that talk time with Marcus was fun. And
yeah.
we happened to have decent chemistry, I guess, and it it just kind of kept rolling. I think we ended up doing about 120 episodes, so 9 or 10 seasons or so.
I
So
had no
yeah,
idea it
wild.
was that much. Did you guys do like one or two a week? Is that how it worked? Or was it
Well,
just
we would batch record where we did every other week. So for the
okay?
longest time, every other week, we spent about 2 hours maybe. We would try to get in 3 episodes, 4 episodes. Sometimes it'd be two if it was like a long, in depth one. But yeah, we just happened to. Marcus is a very consistent person,
Yeah.
and so it was just I just learned a lot through osmosis, through actually asking questions,
Hmm.
and yeah, it was definitely a good investment of time, and it took some time to pay off. Right, it's like podcasts take a long time to grow. That's why nobody wants to do one. It's not like Instagram and just we're on the charts tomorrow, right? But
Right.
I think the genuine like curiosity that it brings out from hosts, guests, and people who just realize like this is not just going to make me famous overnight. Like
Hmm.
but what do I want to talk about? Um, I think it created a space for that because Marcus, for example, like nowadays maybe he's doing more talking and things like that on his Instagram, but back then he had like 49.5k Instagram followers. They were all movement videos, so there was not really him talking. You would maybe get to explore his thinking through writing and how he thought about functional bodybuilding and principles like that. So it was a real privilege to get to have those conversations because he's a very, very intelligent person. And, a lot of it, my job was really just pulling those things out of him, making him
Yeah.
feel natural, comfortable, forgetting that he's even on a podcast. And through that, he would drop some really great nuggets that seemed to resonate.
Yeah. I think sometimes too, like to give you some maybe more credit, like when you interview someone, you can help someone's genius kind of come out in ways they didn't know how to communicate by just asking great questions. And so I think the tag team of, because I used to listen to it. I mean, it was part of what made me want to hire you was I was a big early, you know, podcast junkie with Marcus's podcast and you. So I think like listening to you feed him questions and then him getting to expound, right? It was like a place he needed that place. He probably was doing that with clients, but just didn't have an audience and know how to communicate that. And it really, like you said, it wasn't really a thing people were doing on Instagram 5, 6, 7 years ago. It's now kind of like the norm, but it really wasn't 5, 6, 7 years ago. So
Yeah, he actually also, that was how it started, was because we did 3 episodes on the Airborne Mind show, right? And he would tell me, he's like, dude, every time I come on your show, like I get all these new ideas, I get excited, I just want to go write the next training series program. Like he
yeah,
gets excited to program. And yeah, that's a cool compliment, because I've gotten that from a couple people where somebody said it like, you can see people the way that they want to be seen, and that's like a real power. And I
mm,
kind of glossed over it when they first told me that, but over the years I have begun to see like it is impactful when you can really cut through all of, like, without knowing somebody too well, and really get to like what they care about, and make them, like, you can just see it in their eyes when they get excited about what they're talking about. And I had a lot of fun getting to do that with people. Just like, because that was, Airborne Mind Show was not really too much about me, right? I was young, I was exploring, I was learning. So I had really, every episode, my goal was to make the guests look as best as possible, make them feel good, make them feel smart,
mm.
comfortable enough to like really be their best. So yeah, we got to do that on the Airborne Mind Show. And it was like, I think he liked it and wanted to carry it on, and keep it rolling under functional bodybuilding's brand as well.
I love that. That's awesome. Well, let's jump in today. So you were a coach at Marcus's for how many years? Was it 4 years, 5 years?
3 years.
3 years. Okay. And while you were there, like you were getting, I remember when you were mentoring me, you would fill me in on times and, what was it like there? What kind of coach, clients you had, how many hours you had to work, all that kind of stuff. But a bulk of your clients were, it seemed like your bread and butter became like kind of the burned out CrossFit client. And tell me how you fell into that, like where you started to find like, man, this is where I'm really good as a coach, right? I think every coach tries to figure out what their niche is and where they're going to wind up. I would say that probably became your best one from what I've heard you tell me. Um, how did you kind of find them, or how did they find you? And then what made you feel like you got good at coaching that person? And what were the signs that kind of showed you this is where I need to be. This is the kind of people I need to be coaching.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, so I've been in the fitness industry since 17. I started out the front desk, right? By 18, I was a trainer on the floor. And then I started really just going to certifications like spin instructor, boot camp, like, and getting those opportunities to try to just, one, make more money, because that's like getting more classes and doing stuff like that, but also really define my place. Like, where am I most useful? One time it used to be teaching spin classes. I could really get the energy going. People had a great time. And so really, I think that helping people out with injuries was a personal thing. When I was 19, I had basically herniated disc in my lower back, L5S1. And I don't think I was prepared for just like it fast forwarded life 50 years for me. Like getting out of a car, like lifting your legs to get out of the car, that little movement could set me back 2 weeks. And it was like, I just remember nobody caring, like
Mm,
even though I was part of all these communities, like I was a coach in these places, like people
yeah.
don't relate to pain when they're not in it. And so I just remember, a lot of self research, because like I was wasting a lot of money going to chiropractors and physical therapists, and months would go by, nothing's happening. And so it just became really frustrating, where I'm like, dude, I need to figure this out, because I can't like live like this.
Mm,
Vacuuming would give me pain, and that was my metric. Like, when I vacuum, is my pain triggering? If it is, then something's not working holistically. I need to fix that. So I think it was just the years that I spent kind of, recovering in like my body, but also coming back stronger. Like, I did come back stronger. Physical therapist told me I would not be able to deadlift as much or squat as much probably ever again.
mm,
And I remember in my mind, I was like, that's not true. I'm going to. And it was just the rebellious, fitness person maybe inside of me that was like, no, we're gonna prove them wrong here. And I did. I felt healthy too when I hit those weights. And so when I got to functional bodybuilding, I think Marcus did a good job also of like seeing inside each of us coaches like where our strengths were. Some
Mm,
people were better with other groups, and for me, like the injury, people who had either just gone through an injury or they were bridging back from one, like they had been cleared from PT, but like where do I go from here? Um,
mhm,
I just had a lot of empathy because I know exactly what it's like. I know
mm,
exactly every little like pain point that you're feeling. And over time, it just expanded. It went from back injuries people to shoulders and knees and hips and all that
yeah.
kind of stuff. And you just realize, man, like it's not just even about injuries. Like as you age, like you have aches and pains, and it's not fun. And there are ways to combat that. And so it was cool because those clients, like, they were very grateful when things worked and my program was helping them feel better. And I think I just got addicted to those testimonials, like
Yeah.
long
Yeah.
testimonials, right? Of like, this is where I was before, this is the type of pain I experienced, and here's how I'm doing now.
Hmm.
I almost couldn't believe that I was a part of it. That's how cool it was, and kind of a full circle moment because I had experienced that myself, and it sucked so much that it just made me feel good to be able to save other
Yeah.
people from that.
I can resonate as a coach. Like there's a really sweet feeling when someone hits like a new snatch PR or like back squat PR, but there's like a really, really special feeling when someone's like, I didn't think I'd get out of pain ever again, and I feel great, and I'm actually like doing things I didn't think I'd be able to do again. And you almost feel like you were a part of a journey where you could help give a part of their life back that they maybe lost some hope in, and that's an awesome feeling as a coach.
And you don't realize that is true. Like, think about how much confidence either comes from moving and training and fitness, right? Or it can have the adverse effect. If you're not moving and not training, like it can make you feel not confident in certain
Mm,
areas. And I have just found like confidence is one of those things we could all use more of, I think. And especially, you know, in this arena of moving your body, it has such a great benefit on its own, even if it didn't get you confidence. But I do find that stuff carries over. Like people discover a part of themselves again where they're able to think bigger in other parts of their life, maybe. Because hey, this one other part is going well now. Because I remember that, like, when your back is in pain and you have nerve pain, like nothing else really matters. It's like it's hard to focus on other things, and it's hard to be a positive person. It can take people who are really positive and like bubbly and really just like
yeah,
bring them down. And I've
drains.
seen that over the years. So
Mm,
it's really, yeah, it's empowering to be able to give somebody a piece of that back. And I think that, I always did it in a way where I hope to leave you with this information long term. Like beyond our time together, I hope that you will remember some of this when your pain comes back up again. And,
hmm.
how do you approach that? And how do you rely on yourself? Instead of needing like 10 specialists to be able to figure out what's going on.
Totally. So when you had the CrossFitter, the former athlete, kind of come to you, and most of the time in pain, maybe burned out, back pain. What type of training kind of would you give them that was both what they needed, but also kind of made it fun again, right? Like, because a lot of times, like doing like the physical therapy stuff can be so like daunting that most people kind of quit or give up on it and just kind of live with the pain and then like stop altogether. Like there's probably some of
Yeah.
our listeners, right? They've probably felt that or are trying to fight that. But what were some tactics that you did that helped the client enjoy their fitness again?
I think it's really about knowing the client,
Mm-hmm.
because two people can come to you with the same exact back injury, but they are coming from totally different contexts. So I had one guy who was like a golf pro, like he taught people golf. He played golf all day long, like it was his life. You know, the PGA tours and stuff. He goes, helps set up equipment. Like he's very immersed in that world. And to see his, you know, where he was coming from, the movements and things that I would give him were very different than what I was giving to somebody actually in Florida who, you know, she experienced a lower back injury and she was one of my most compliant clients. She worked out at like 5 or 6 in the morning, filmed every single movement, multiple videos of each movement, multiple sets, reps, like really dedicated. But that client needed more stimulation. Like I need this to feel like I'm sweating even in the Florida humidity. Like I need this to feel like I'm working hard. And then with, you know, the other client who's kind of the golf pro, it was really about not setting him back,
Mm-hmm.
and making sure that like each session you're building up a little bit of like, oh, I can do this. Okay, that
Yeah.
wasn't so bad. So you have to get strategic with what things can help work up a sweat, get people to breathe heavy, but not challenge them so hard that they're set back 2 weeks again on day one.
Yeah.
Which requires some creativity, but it's kind of like understanding how does your client think and what do they like? What movements do they find fun? What makes them feel strong and capable? And the good news is there's a lot of movements out there, right? And if you understand movement patterns, you can create things that help people feel that way with, you know, removing the element of danger or, you know, injuring themselves again in a way.
Yeah.
So, so much of it comes back to like knowing the client and them also, I think, trusting you, like making
Mm-hmm.
sure that they don't feel shame or guilt, I
Yeah.
guess, for
Mm-hmm.
because there's a lot of that too, right? Like, I just signed up and hired this coach from functional bodybuilding. I'm paying so much money per month. These guys know what they're doing. Like people feel like to their coach, like, oh, I want to impress my coach. You know what I mean? That's great. But with some people, you got to give them the heads up. Like, look, I'm not judging you. I don't need, you're not trying to impress me here. Like we're in this for you. It helps when you give people upfront expectations about that kind of stuff. Because I would say that if you don't, you eventually encounter a roadblock, right? Where whether it's in month 3 or week 3, like, oh, they feel like I couldn't make this session happen. I'm 3 sessions behind now. And all of a sudden I don't want to reply to my coach. And, you know, it
Yeah.
just becomes this
Yeah.
thing. So, um, so much of it is about knowing, I think, the person that's on the other end, especially in
Mm-hmm.
a remote setting.
Yeah, there's a uniqueness of building that relationship that really helps answer a lot of those questions. I love that you did that because I kind of set you up for like a simple yes or no, or like a easy question. Like in the sense, I wanted like the temptation was to give an easy answer to that question, and you didn't fall for it. You gave a really nuanced answer, which was shows your wisdom. Um, this is good. This is great stuff. Like, what would you say were some of the lessons that stuck with you the most from these experiences of kind of coaching clients out of pain, or like the client who comes to you and they're just like, they've lost their passion for fitness. They're just kind of like, I think you had one person who you had mentioned years ago to me that was like a former games athlete that kind of was just burned out that came to you,
Yeah. Yeah.
and just like how did you help them both like personally, but also in the program, like figure out how to enjoy fitness again? Like
Yeah. I
what were those
think,
principles? Hmm.
yeah, I think that they're like with that person specifically that you just mentioned, that's a good example because they chose me specifically because they didn't know me that well. Like they had heard me on the Airborne Mind show and kind of known me from there. But the other coaches that were options were people that there was history with already. Like, oh, you know, I'm a games athlete, you know that what
Yeah.
I'm capable of. And she was very like, look, I need you to the reason I'm choosing it, I need you to treat me like a beginner. Like really like glute bridges and planks and that
Mm,
kind of a thing, like the second people catch a glimpse of the fact that I'm a games athlete, former competitor, like it just coaches want to impress. Like I want to impress you and challenge you, and
yeah.
and I also felt that too. That like I don't want you to feel bored. I don't. I want to make sure you're sufficiently challenged. Um, and so I think it's figuring out, like one of the things I did with that client was figuring out what were some of the movements that she still found stimulating and empowering from the competitive days. And it wasn't a lot of dynamic stuff, as you would
Mm,
expect. It wasn't like snatches and clean jerk. Oh, I have to do those, right? It was really, being able to just feel in control of your body again,
mm,
I think. To be honest, I think that's a principle that like a lot of us are searching for, just control. Like,
yes. Yeah.
it's like everything is so out of control in other parts of life and the world that like it feels really nice to be able to, hey, this 1 hour, this 30 minutes, my body, I can at least, be in charge of.
Yes, bro, you're on to something really gold there because like I've talked to clients that are like at all different levels, right? Like you have, and they'll go to these CrossFit competitions, and one of like they're in the RX or elite division, and one of the things that like frustrates every single person is feeling like it was so challenging that I really was out of control. I think is a good way to put it. Like you couldn't finish the event. They made it so challenging you couldn't even finish the event. And it's like people want to feel like it was hard, but I could do it. And the coach is supposed to gradually kind of push that envelope where it's like it's never we shouldn't be pushing people into failure, which is a lot of times where the athlete goes, I feel. And what you just said was just like it was great because it was like she wanted to feel in control, which is such a great principle for coaches. Like, so we need to test and know where that is, know the athlete, but also kind of like slowly keep that in there and like leave a little bit in the tank almost, like where it's like you can come back for some more because it felt so good. Does that make sense? Is that like
100%. I
yeah.
think that definition also expands a little, right? So there are ways where, okay, I want to give you this movement for your knee and give you like, you got to attach a band, you need a box, you need these 10 pieces of equipment to set it up. Like that alone, I might feel good programming that and like, oh, look, it's a new movement. They're going to love it. But like that on the wrong day, when somebody's like has 40 minutes and they're trying to get their workout in, can make them feel out of control. Like, oh,
Mm,
this movement is so complicated. Like, what am I doing here? This is not what I'm here to do. Right. So
right.
it's very, you have to be really thoughtful about each movement that I think that you give people. And so much of it, I think, in the early days is like a self, you're it's kind of coming out of like wanting to impress or wanting to like the fear of failure a little bit, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't want this person to get bored or be like, well, why am I doing air squats when, like, you just feel like because they're paying you for programming and for coaching, and it's a little expensive, that like you need to entertain, and that's a very weird trap to be in. And
Yeah.
I'm really grateful that we didn't entertain that too much. Like the people that were coming in were actually willing to do basics and things like that, versus I've worked with clients who they need to do the basics but they don't want to do it and they feel like they're not doing anything when they do it.
Mm,
So yeah, it goes a long way helping, like really thinking about just like a product, any product or service, like user experience. What's the user experience like for somebody to go through your workout from the
mhm.
moment they start the warm up to the moment they finish? You can really put yourself almost through that. And I think, have a good sense of, will my client leave with more or less control? The idea is a sense of more, hopefully.
I love that. That's great. User experience. That's key. Yeah. How long did you like? How long would you say when someone came to you, typically it took before they were feeling like kind of good again? And I'm not like looking necessarily for like a timeline, but like what was the process most people had to kind of go through is the question, right? Like to kind of get back to like, man, this was worth it. I'm so glad I worked with Ms. because before I was in pain, burned out, not feeling like I enjoyed fitness anymore. And then Misbah took me through X, Y, and Z, and now I'm kind of here. What was the X, Y, and Z that kind of got people to feel like, those principles you would try to walk people through? And I know it's still nuanced and kind of person by person, but what would you say were some of the basics?
I think assessments were huge. I know there was this vibe of like, oh, people don't like to be tested and assessed and that kind of a thing. But it goes a long way. And if you can really explain why you're doing it to your client, they'll agree. And it's for you as the coach to be able to get the information and know where your client stands and what will be good to give them. But it is also for your client because instead of you telling them, hey, see how, see how you can't do the side plank for 90 seconds, like they can discover that because you program that for them and you put a note, hey, you're shooting for 90 seconds or whatever, right? And so I think that was a learning process for a lot of people where they were like, oh wow, like there are some areas where I need to shore up some of this stuff. And so it laid context for what was about to come. So assessment, whether it was a week or 2 weeks up front, there was a phase of that. And then I would say, like, if you were somebody deconditioned, you hadn't moved in a while, and this was kind of you just getting back into it, I would say within 4 to 6 weeks, a lot of times, people could feel really good.
Yeah.
But again, there are some people where it took way longer. I'm thinking of an ICU nurse who her sister was also a nurse. She had gotten diagnosed with cancer, was pretty like fast. And all of a sudden it's like now she's going to be in hospice care. Right. And so getting to see your client go through this like period of just grief and just, like inflammation, all these things that come with that. That wasn't really just like a 4 week event. That was like a year long experience, right? And there were waves. Like there were times where they would feel great, and there are times where you don't feel so hot.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Over time, what did you learn to really be looking for, like with clients? Like you mentioned assessment, but like,
Mm.
what were some of the other kind of signs that, like, if the client is listening, like maybe even you can help them become more autonomous? Like, what was it from a coach's eye that like a client should be looking at themselves and saying, here's the things I kind of really saw or should be noticing that kind of say, hey, like I think I'm burning out. And then like second question we'll get to, because we talked a little bit this offline, but when you do feel that burnout, how do you go from like not feeling shame about it, but like kind of retraining yourself to think differently about how do I use fitness at this time, right? Because for the athlete, right, for the athlete, it's like some of this is your identity. It's like, this is what I do, this is who I am. And then like if you lose that because you're like, man, my nervous system's just shot, I'm not enjoying this anymore, it like drains me and I'm only just going through the motions and I'm feeling banged up and I hate it. Like, how do you, as you see those signs, like how do you shift into a place where you're not shaming yourself, but you're rethinking of your fitness in a different lens?
It's a great question because I've also been through this personally, right? It's like I've coached tons of clients, but many coaches, you also experience burnout at some point yourself as well. And I I think that is one of the toughest parts of the process is it's stemming from identity, right? So if you didn't have this identity of like, oh, I'm a CrossFitter, I lift this heavy, I do these things, some of that shame doesn't really have a chance to enter. But at the same time, identity plays a very huge role in motivating us. So if I say I am a CrossFitter, right? Guess what? Like now, subconsciously, everything wants to kind of serve that identity. And that can really, really help depending on, I think, what your
Powerful.
goals are. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would say like the signs were definitely Sam Altman said this about burnout, maybe in a different context. It's not fitness related, but I think it can apply to fitness, which is burnout is too many failures in a row, without any
Mm,
success, right? So when you keep failing and failing and failing, and part of that is sometimes your standards are just too high. Like a lot of high performers have very high expectations of themselves, and that can be enough to set off burnout because everything you're doing, nothing feels like enough. Nothing, it's like, this, and you keep just chasing more and more and more. And so there's something in there, I think, to consider. And then I would just say like a lot of the physical signs, like there's physical signs around like energy, your energies and motivation, um, your recovery. So like when you wake up in the mornings, like you're just like, whoa, you feel like you got hit by a truck. Um, those kinds of things, especially when I was weightlifting, I really pushed my body to some crazy limits in weightlifting, doing some very aggressive training programs and things like that. And my weightlifting coach at the time was a old school traditional weightlifting coach. And so where you're training in heavy zones very often. And I just remember like my body, it felt like I had the chills at one point. Like it was like,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like it feels like, whoa, what's going on? Like I can't do a single rep. And that once you experience that, it's not fun. And I think it can make that shame a little easier to handle where you're like, all right, I do need to step back a little bit. Um, I think one of the ways to combat that is if you're, for me at the time, snatch, clean, jerk, right? Okay, if I can't maybe snatch and clean jerk as heavy right now, being able to do it at 65 pounds, at 95 pounds, and focus on speed, focus on form, focus on technique, like those are all things I could still maybe do and still gave me a sense of like control, speed. Look at how I'm moving, right? But there is like you need some self control because I definitely know where I'd be training in the past, right? Somebody next to you puts 135 pounds on their bar. Like you have to be able to hold yourself back sometimes from falling into that, you know?
Hmm.
So I think your environment makes a big difference. Like if you are somebody training in a group class environment, you're the only one doing individual programming and you're hurt or burnt out and you want to like there's a lot of shame there because it's like, hey,
Yeah.
why aren't you doing the class with us, like, oh, put on 10 more pounds, man, like, and these are just, they're not meant to be hurtful comments or anything. They're just like motivating and just what you say in the gym a lot of times. But knowing that you're going to be faced with that and you might be in that environment allows you to prepare yourself a little more.
Mm,
And I think it forces you, quite honestly, to play your own game instead of other people's game, which is, you know, takes everybody a different amount of time to learn that lesson, including myself. But it can be a helpful reminder. It's like we really have to let go of competing with people on the board for the sake of it right now and focus on just getting you in a place where you're not sidelined every couple weeks.
mm, I love that. Yeah. I It's funny you say that. I literally just had this conversation with a client this week. He felt great on Monday, and went way higher than the percentages I told him to, and then he like tanked it on Wednesday. And we had to refer back to like not following protocol on Monday, just getting excited, right? Pushing in the envelope and then like coming back and like just learning those lessons, right? Like exactly how you said it. Like we learn them from like, gosh, my body feels like this. Okay, I got to learn, leave some in the tank. And I think too, that's when you start. I know everybody thinks of like programs are just programs, just the adherence to them is what really gets you. And there's a lot of truth to that. You can adhere to a really crappy program and get great results if you're just consistent. But this is where like the individualization and really learning to trust a good program is like just follow the blueprint so that you don't feel like crap, right? Because if you go off and you're just like, man, today the stars are aligned, I'm feeling great, you're not thinking about everything you got to get done on Thursday and Friday and like how it's going to impact it down the road. So I'm going to leave you with this one, and we'll kind of land the plane here. If you could tell a burned out athlete, this is the question I wrote for you, one thing that would that would kind of help them, or even like referring back to yourself in some of these situations, right? So like where you were feeling burned out as an ollie lifter, or even like post like moving out of being a trainer who like fitness was your life to like I'm doing Pod Mahal full time, getting married, doing moving on with my life. What would you tell yourself, in those senses when you're either really, really busy and kind of like shifting in those identities, or feeling kind of the burned out version of yourself? What would be the one thing you tell yourself that would help you now?
I think spend a disproportionate amount of time understanding yourself. That will go a very long way. I think I spent too much time in my 20s, like kind of understanding myself and knowing, like, oh, I think this is right, or this is where I see things are going. But I didn't have the confidence or those types of tools back then to go, yeah, this is what I believe and this is aligned with me. I was really kind of following other people's version of what that was. And I think the like this actually comes back to a burnout client that I worked with. He was a CFO of a Fortune 1000 company. That product is probably in all of our homes right now, and he was somebody who did triathlons while he was an executive, right? So this is a guy who's used to pushing himself, and he competed in CrossFit and all that kind of stuff during the peak as well. And for him, he did the exact same thing. Like Mondays, oh, I'm feeling great and I'm just going to go really hard here, right? But guess
Mm.
what? When you get to your 5 o'clock meeting and you're like falling asleep because you just like went so hard on your back squat, like we had to communicate, this concept of a battery. Look at yourself as like, hey, just like a full battery. Every day we start with 100%, right? So, how, based on your day, how are you going to spend this battery? Knowing what you know about yourself, right? And everybody's different here, right? If I push myself a little too hard on the snatches, that might throw off or take away battery from, some of the later parts of my day. And for other people, it might be, hey, if I eat this ice cream, this might throw me off completely in the later parts of my day. But understanding your battery, what things take a lot of energy away, what you need energy for, and how to allocate those things is very helpful. And you'd be surprised. People who are, again, this was a CFO, right? Like, this is a concept that felt very new and like exciting to him, even though it was kind of obvious to me
Yeah.
and to all of us, right?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, just budget your energy a little better, because you have 5 sessions, for example, right? If you, and it takes, you train for a couple of years, you begin to catch on, like, oh, if I go really hard on Monday and Tuesday and empty the tank, by the time I get to Friday, I can barely work out, right? And that might not be the goal. So really spending a lot of time understanding what taxes you, what energizes you, um, it can have a disproportionate impact because you'll make better decisions for yourself in the gym and movement, and I think beyond.
Know thyself. That's a great reminder. Misbah, real quick as we close, remind people where they can reach out and use your product at Pod Mahal, and places that they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So Pod Mahal, you can get on Amazon. If you want to take a look at the kind of work that I'm doing, and get in touch, podmahal.com is the place to go. And then everywhere else you can check me out. Habit Chess is my latest podcast. That's kind of where I am talking about training the strength and conditioning of skills. So really taking everything that I've learned in all my time, coaching and being a practitioner of fitness as well, and using it to basically as a mental model for learning new things faster. That's kind of the goal. Because I think we're entering an era right now where we're going to need to learn new things and we're going to need to learn them faster. And fitness is a wonderful mental model to carry with you throughout your life and to
Yeah.
use as context for other things. And so I have a lot of fun doing that. If you want to check it out, Habit Chess, wherever you get podcasts. I think if you're a fitness enthusiast, you will get a lot out of it.
Man, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you for all that you've done in my life, and helped my coaching business and career. And yeah, we're just appreciative of your time, brother.
Of course. Thanks for having me on. This was an honor, great conversation. And if you've made it this far, do me a favor and leave Blake a review wherever you're at. It goes a very
Yes.
long way, and it's free for you to give, and has a very high impact, and helps Blake continue to do what he's doing. You do a great job, and I'm excited to see you grow, man.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Of course.